Carlton dance. Alright, well that is enough of that, everybody, for one day. And I don't know, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did when that was playing in the episode, because that was pure torture. I will tell you that much right now. That was pure torture. And yeah, anyway, it was pretty hell for Daryl last night, I'll tell you that much, guys. So I am here with my episode review of Season 7, Episode 3 that aired last night, entitled The Cell. And this was all about Negan's compound and Daryl, and focused primarily on Dwight, to be honest. A lot of character detail there on Dwight, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really nice episode to sort of take a break of. You know, we introduced ourselves last week to the Kingdom, and with, you know, the reintroduction of Carol and Morgan, again, you know, back with them, which was nice to see. And then this time we sort of get to see, you know, from the enemy's point of view, Negan. Obviously, we're supposed to not really like him too much, you know what I mean? But at times it's sort of hard not to like Negan, you know what I mean? You love to hate him in a way. For instance, on Talking Dead last night, they mentioned that basically he's a villain that's not really boring. He's not a depressing villain like we're used to, you know, like with the governor and, you know, stuff like that. He's sort of just a broken man. With Negan, it's much more sophisticated. And I love it, you know what I mean? Seeing it from his perspective, how he lives and stuff like that, I thought it was really interesting. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Now, right off the bat, there was a lot of detail in this episode. Now, we're not going to obviously go over everything. We're going to go over the main points of this episode, like what happened with Daryl and, you know, how he got tortured and some things that happened with Dwight on a mission he went on. You know, he sort of went on a mission to find a guy that left the community, basically. The same thing he did, you know, back in season 6, he left with his wife and tried to escape Negan, then ultimately went back to him. That's how he got the burn on the face. So he's essentially hunting down somebody who did the exact same thing, you know, he did. They're running away from Negan's compound. They don't want anything more to do with it, and that is not allowed. That will not fly there. So the episode starts off with sort of a sequence that I thought was interesting, because it was just like a joyful sequence of Dwight basically building a sandwich. Dwight was watching TV, he was playing air hockey, he was carving wooden figurines, which was pretty interesting because we've seen actually a wooden figurine back in episode 6 of season 6 that Daryl sort of kept with him. So that was one of Dwight's talents that he sort of introduced to Daryl in a way. And anyway, in the marketplace, he basically cuts to the front of the bread line, and he basically makes himself a sandwich with a bunch of different materials found throughout that entire, you know, sanctuary compound, which I thought was interesting, you know what I mean? He's sort of taking from other people and trading and, you know, all this stuff. And he's sort of a head guy there at Saviors. Well, not at the Saviors, but at Sanctuary, and he can sort of get away with it, you know what I mean? He's a head guy. He's sort of up there on the ladder. He has all these advantages. He can live like a king, basically. And that's what all of Negan's men do, or at least the ones that are higher up on the scale. And he's definitely up there, okay? So he made a sandwich basically by just taking supplies from a bunch of people, pickles, tomatoes, you know, stuff like that, and just skipping all these invisible lines, you know, just because he's high up there on that hierarchy scale, I guess. That would be a way to put it. I just thought it was a cool little intro to, you know, give us for the episode. I thought it was very interesting to see how they sort of lived. And with that being said, the rest of the episode is not so bright. The rest of the episode involves Daryl in a dark room, naked, actually, completely naked in the nude. Obviously, we don't really get to see anything. He's sort of huddled up in the corner. Thank God. I mean, I'm sure the ladies out there would have liked to, you know, see something. But with that being said, all right, and all awkwardness aside, we didn't see anything, okay? And obviously, it's cable TV. You know what I mean? They can't really do that. Maybe on the Blu-ray. I don't know. All jokes aside, though, he's basically sitting in that room, that dark little room that he has there, and he's being tortured with music that's going on, which is obviously the song you heard at the start of this, Easy Street, by the way. It's available on Spotify and on iTunes. I will leave the link in the description below. It's kind of popular now for some reason. You know, it's not like it wasn't on the show or anything. But anyway, yeah, it's available on Spotify and stuff like that, so definitely make sure you guys go check that out. It does get very annoying very quickly, but it does have a catchy tune to it. I will say that, it does. And basically, he's tortured with that, playing repeatedly over and over again, not being allowed to sleep, and only being fed dog food sandwiches, which turns out is not really a big issue for Daryl, you know what I mean? He sort of just laps it down. I guess it's probably not the first time he's eaten dog food, you know, before. So, it was sort of a way, for Dwight to sort of, I don't know, in a way troll him. But Daryl just took the sandwich out of his hand, ate it anyway. Like, it didn't even faze him. It was just dog food sandwich. He didn't care. It was food. You know what I mean? I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of funny of, Daryl to do that. Because, again, we've seen him eat tons of things before that not any normal human being would eat, And he does it without thinking, you know what I mean? It doesn't really faze him. Now, there is a long way that I could go with this, just explaining in detail every single time that he opens that door, gives him a sandwich, continues playing the music, and, keeps on doing that. But we're going to go to the short way, okay? Essentially, basically, he gets taken eventually to an infirmary with some clothes on, and gets inspected by a Dr. Carson. And Daryl got there just as Sherry, which is Dwight's ex-wife, was basically at Dr. Carson, trying to test to see if she was positive for pregnancy, and obviously that would be with Negan, not with Dwight, because they're sort of not together anymore. With that being said, basically Dwight asks her, if it's positive, it was negative. That was sort of a sigh of relief there from Dwight in a way. And we get to see a lot of things with Dwight's perspective in this episode. He's sort of trapped there. We sort of have this pity on him. We know that he doesn't want to be there, but he's being there for the sake of his wife and for the sake of just keeping her fed. He likes to care about her, but unfortunately, while he's there, he can't be with her. This episode really gets us thinking about, why Dwight is what he is. You know what I mean? And we sort of understand it by the end of it, or at least I do. I don't know about you guys, but let me know that in the comment section below if you guys agree with me. Then Dr. Carson examines Daryl's injured shoulder and assures him that Negan will take care of him. Obviously, that's where he got shot. So, again, in a nutshell, he's just being examined for that gunshot wound, seeing if he's okay. Now, this next scene was actually in one of the sneak peeks where he basically takes Daryl outside and shows him the prisoners, basically pulling walkers out there, chaining him up, and, sort of doing their job. And that's when he sort of explains to Daryl, you can be like them, you can be like me, or you can be like them, which is referring to the walkers. You know what I mean? So he's sort of just giving Daryl some options right now on what he could do and how he could better his life here. So that's what that whole scene was about, and that will come into play later in the episode. Daryl has to head back to his cell and repeatedly kicks on the door as the music plays, and with a scene now with Negan and Dwight, basically Dwight says, he's close to breaking, and Negan says, yeah, you're sure as hell right he is. And then Negan sends Dwight on this mission to basically go and, capture that guy who ran off on his own, you know what I mean? He's running away from the compound, running away from Negan, and he basically gets Dwight to go do that. So Dwight had a pretty close call. All right, let's just say that. He had a pretty close call with a walker, ended up actually shooting it, and then ultimately surviving. And now back with Daryl, we actually get to see Daryl sort of have an opportunity to escape here. Basically, one of the saviors brought him a sandwich, left the door open, assumingly on accident, but it was obviously a test. It ended up turning out to be a test. As he walked through the hallways, he ran into Sherry, which she basically told him to get back in the cell before someone caught him. You're not going to get out of here. And just tried to persuade him, into doing just that. Daryl ended up not doing that. He ran out into the courtyard, tried to steal a bike, and ran into Negan and a big horde of the saviors. So this is where we sort of all got, nervous. You know what I mean? This is where our nerves shook. This is where we didn't know what was going to happen. And Negan starts off with the same line, "We piss in our pants yet?" And then that's when we had a commercial break. And by the way, there was a lot of commercials last episode. Now, I think one of the main reasons for that is because they're planning to not really have too many commercials on next week's episode, which is a 90-minute episode, which is, it's going to be pretty cool. It's called Service, I believe. I think it's called Service. Yep, it's called Service. Okay, so yeah, guys, it's a 90-minute episode next week, and it's going to be pretty interesting. So maybe they added more commercials to this episode to make that one, go by without as many commercials. Let's hope. Let's hope that's the case, all right? So anyway, I don't know. It just seemed to have a lot of commercials. I don't know if that was just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. But with that being said, Negan basically talks to Daryl and, assures him that everybody around him is Negan. Everybody's everywhere. Or Negan is everywhere, rather. And there's no really escaping it, And he basically said this was your opportunity to prove yourself. If you went back in that cell, if you didn't come out, then fine. You were probably going to be one of us. But since you did what you did, there's going to be consequences. And then he actually goes to swing Lucille at Daryl's head. Daryl basically doesn't flinch. He just sort of stands there. And that's when Daryl pulls out the line from the promo saying, "You don't scare easy." I like that. So Negan leaves Daryl alive, but leaves the scene and all of the saviors that are left there beat the living shit out of Daryl. So he's not dead, but he definitely got an ass kicking. Back on the road now with Dwight. We actually get to see Dwight run into the guy that ran away, which was Gordon. They had an altercation, ended up basically killing him, shooting him in the back. And there was a big moment there, I thought at least, that I thought we were going to see Dwight sort of break, you know what I mean? And start the process into becoming a rebel, you know what I mean? Like we all know that he does in the comic book. By the way, spoilers, I'm sorry. It happens, you know what I mean? It's a review of The Walking Dead. It can't be done otherwise. So anyways, it didn't happen yet, but there was definitely a lot of talking down there from Gordon. I thought it was a pretty interesting altercation between Gordon and Dwight. At times, Dwight seemed like he was going to break. He ended up not, and like I said, he shot him in the back. And essentially from there brought him back to the compound. Dwight then makes it back to the compound, has a little run-in with Sherry in the hallway and gets like a cigarette from her. Not really a big deal there. But he went to her to reassure himself of what they did was right. You know, what they did with coming back was the right thing to do. And they ultimately agree. You know, I think there's still some doubt there in his mind, and it will eventually lead to a rebellion from him. But as of right now, it hasn't happened yet. Now, I really liked what was happening next, guys. It was sort of like Dwight was sort of helping Daryl unintentionally. He sort of provided Daryl with a photo of Glenn. Obviously, dead Glenn, brain splattered all over the pavement Glenn, but nonetheless, Glenn. He basically pointed out to Daryl saying, you know, you're basically the one who got your friend killed. And he gave him the picture of Glenn that creepy guy took at the end of the scene. And back in episode 1, and he gave him that picture and basically left him there with it. Put it on the wall and then left him there. He closed the door, but he didn't go anywhere. He sort of just stood there on the other side of the door, leaning his head against it. And I thought this was a really... I would say unintentional, you know, sentimental moment. We sort of get to see Dwight and Daryl sort of connect here in a way. Daryl finally broke down by looking at that picture, and this was sort of his chance to grieve. You know, this was Dwight really giving Daryl a chance to grieve. Again, I don't know if it was intentional for him to give Daryl that chance to grieve, but he finally did. Daryl basically broke down crying in his cell. Of course, with the music playing, the really annoying music playing. And yeah, that happened. So again, I thought it was really nice of Dwight to do that. Again, we don't know if it's intentional or not, but I thought it was a really interesting connection there between the two characters. Because again, he was sort of on the outside of the cell, leaning his head against it, and sort of feeling for him at the exact same time that Daryl was, you know, feeling for himself. And then we get to see a meeting between Daryl, Dwight, and Negan. So Dwight takes Daryl to an apartment where Negan is basically waiting, and Negan essentially says this, you know, you can become one of us, this apartment can be yours, you can live like a freaking king, all you have to do is answer one question. Before he really does that, he really explained to Daryl what happened with Dwight, you know, saying that they weren't always on good terms. One time he left with his wife Sherry, and essentially, you know, stole a bunch of supplies from him. He eventually came back, and that's when he had to get he had to face the iron. That's what he had to do. He was planning to kill him. Sherry begged him not to. Sherry promised, you know, Negan that she would marry him if she left him alive. So they essentially saved each other's life, basically. And I thought it was kind of cool. Negan sort of offered a backstory to Dwight. You know, we didn't really get to see that before. We sort of had a feeling what was going on there with Dwight and his wife, but it was never really said outright, you know. And finally to have it explained to us by Negan was sort of relieving, because, again, this is another point in the episode where we really get to see Dwight's perspective on things. You know, he was sort of... he sort of had his hand forced in the matter. You know what I mean? He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to do this, but he has to. He has to do this in order to survive. And there was a lot of that within that confrontation between him and Gordon back on the road, too, before he killed him. Anyway, the question that Daryl had to answer from Negan was, who are you? And he asked it twice. Negan asks the question twice. Who are you? And the correct response here is supposed to be Negan. That is the correct response. You're not supposed to respond with your own name because now you belong to him. Negan is everywhere, you know, that whole sort of mindset, right? Daryl doesn't. Daryl stands up after thinking for a while and says, Daryl. Yeah. Not good. He basically stood right up to Negan there, and that was such a badass moment from him. And Negan basically said, you know, you made a stupid choice, essentially. He could end up on the wall on a pike as a walker, protecting that community, still serving technically as a savior, or he could be one of those prisoners. working for points, right, is what I think it was called, right? And back in Daryl's cell, we get to have another moment with Dwight and Daryl here. Dwight is basically yelling at him for jeopardizing his own life, basically saying, you know, why would you do that? That's the only way that you can survive. And as he was about to close the door, basically Daryl just said, I get why you did it, you know, why you took it. And it's because you were thinking about someone else, meaning his wife, Sherry. And then Daryl basically leaves that conversation off. That's why I can't. You know, he doesn't have anybody else to really take that pledge for. You know, it's just him and himself, and he wants to stick to his morals. You know, he doesn't want to conform to those rules because that's not who he is, right? The only way he would really conform to those rules if there was somebody he really cared about that was in danger, you know? Just like Dwight did it. You know, Dwight didn't want to do it either. He said he didn't want to kneel before Negan. He ultimately ended up doing it to save his wife, Sherry's life. And then outside in a final scene, we get to see Dwight basically, I wouldn't really even say enraged, you know what I mean? He's just sort of angry at the world. And this could be his breaking point right here. It could be definitely very subtle, but he basically chucks his beer bottle at a fence and watches the two workers secure another walker to the fence line, and it's Gordon, the guy who Dwight shot in the back. And that is the end of the episode, everybody. So, again, a very strong episode. I thought it was really good. I really do. It wasn't really action-packed. You know, again, what we're used to, there was sort of 2 cool-down episodes, but next episode looks pretty freaking insane, if I do say so myself. And so far, you know what I mean? It's building up to be pretty damn good. It's Negan's first visit to Alexandria, which in the comic books, it was pretty freaking cool. Let me just say that it was pretty damn awesome. So, anyway, with that being said, everybody, that was my review for Season 7, Episode 3, entitled The Cell. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to smash it up with a like. While you're at it, why don't you take the easy street to that subscribe button. That was corny as shit. I'm sorry. I won't do that again. I will not do that again. But nonetheless, thank you all so much for watching. If you guys like any of my gaming content, make sure you guys tune in tomorrow for some of that. If not, that's fine too. Tune back in on Thursday for my episode predictions videos for this week's up-and-coming episode of The Walking Dead, which is Season 7, Episode 4, entitled Service. I know I talk way too fast. I'm sorry. I will see you guys later. Take care, everybody. Bye. Today, we are back here for my weekly episode predictions for this week's up-and-coming episode of The Walking Dead, which is Season 7, Episode 3, entitled The Cell. Now, of course, my predictions will contain spoilers for previous episodes of The Walking Dead, so if you guys are not caught up